Welcome back, SethBling here, and today I want to share with you a speedrun that I did yesterday. This is my new personal best in the Super Mario World Zero Exit category. You might know it as the Credits Warp. So this is a new route that I came up with for the Credits Warp. It still warps straight to the credits without defeating Bowser, but it does it in a little bit of a different way. It's kind of based on a tool-assisted speedrun that Master June made. But it also shares kind of some of the components of Jeff W356's route and also the Mr. Cheese arbitrary code execution route. So like I said, I came up with this route. I had a little bit of help from P4+2, but the vast majority of everything that was found in order to make this work, I actually did myself, and I looked through a lot of source code and trace logs to debugger and a lot of RAM maps and all that stuff to figure out how this stuff worked. I'm not going to go over the nitty-gritties of how this works. It's actually very, very technical. But what I will do is show you some of the stuff in the route that is kind of weird looking that you might have questions about and why I'm doing it. So for instance, right now, I'm kind of picking up shells and spitting them out and taking my time with that. You've probably seen that before. That happens in pretty much every human viable credits warp route. But there's some other weird stuff. For instance, okay, I actually did not mean to lose Yoshi here. This is actually a pretty big time loss, and I could have had potentially a world record, actually. I think this route should pretty easily allow for a world record, but not in the run you're seeing right now because, well, I kind of messed up. But yeah, there's some weird stuff, and after the run is over, which will be momentarily, I'll kind of talk about a couple of those things. But yeah, right here we have the end. And we go straight to the credits. So, like I said, this is a credits warp, which means we don't beat Bowser. Whether or not you consider this beating the game, some people definitely don't, and that's a fine opinion. But this is a category, a speedrun category for Super Mario World, to get to the credits. At the end of this, it will say the end, and so that's how you know it's the credits. Let me show you some of the stuff, though. For instance, here we have the block dupe. This is where I duplicate the Yoshi block, and I have to duplicate it to the side. And that's because there's a portion of memory that's dedicated to keeping track of which blocks you've already collected, and I actually need that portion of memory to have a certain value. So I have to hit both the original Yoshi block and also the duplicated Yoshi block, and that sets it to the right value. And then next, I have to, well, I get this 1-up out of this egg here, but it's very important that the egg particles that come off, that kind of shoot off of the egg, despawn at the right times. The bottom left particle and the top right particle are the ones I care about. The bottom left can despawn whenever it wants normally. That actually gives me the right value. The top right has to despawn when it has a vertical speed of hex 1-8 or hex 1A. It's just kind of this weird thing, and I just need it to happen with one of those two values. So that's actually kind of a very timing critical and just generally difficult part of the speedrun. Next up, like I said, we have the shells. And I'm picking up and spitting out these shells in very specific X coordinates. That's because their X coordinates are all stored next to each other in memory. And by setting up a bunch of X coordinates in a row, I set up a very small segment of processor instructions. And this is called an arbitrary code execution exploit. When the glitch happens, it'll actually run code based on what is in that sprite X coordinate table. And so by spitting these out at just the right X coordinates, I'm setting up code that says to set the game mode to credits mode. After that, I pick up a shell and do some kind of weird things with it. I kind of turn around a couple times. There is an animation that happens when Mario turns around, and it draws basically a tile onto the screen. And there's a part of memory responsible for drawing tiles onto the screen called OAM. I don't even know what it stands for, but that's what it's called. And basically, I have to draw that tile, or make sure that tile is drawn, at just the right part of the screen. And by doing so, it sets the X coordinate of that in memory, and basically that value becomes important. And then I also kick this shell off to the left at a very specific X coordinate, again because of that OAM table where it's drawing the white splat animation onto the screen. that splat animation has to also happen at a very specific x coordinate. Finally, I come to the end of the level. I have to be careful that I don't kill the Koopas with the shells that are right next to them, because the shell would be fine, but it would draw a splat animation to the screen, which would overwrite the value that I just wrote, and so that would be no good. And then finally, we have the item swap at the very end, and this is where I basically trick the game into letting Yoshi eat a charge and chuck, which he's not... Whoa, it was really loud car outside. He's not supposed to be able to eat the charge and chuck, and so the game doesn't really know what to do. It jumps to basically a part of memory that it shouldn't jump to, and from there, that's where I take advantage of all those memory values that I set earlier in the run, and tell it to start running the code from the sprite x coordinate table that sets the game into credits mode, and then I return the game back to normal operation, and it plays the credits. So that's not exactly how it works, but what I had to go through to make this all work, and what goes into a speedrun. If you want to see my notes for this whole thing, for this route, I have a link in the video description for the notes, and also some other links you might be interested in. That's about it. Thanks for watching.